morning, good morning, good morning, and happy Saturday. That music gets me going every Saturday morning. Thank you guys for joining us. I am here with the Advocates 2.0 and our special guest. I am Kimberly Holmes Ross with Evanston Cradle to Career, where we partner with over 40 organizations to make Evanston the most equitable place it can be. And I am proud of that. I am proud to be here with our Facebook family and our Radio La Difference family. It is a wonderful partnership. We have a lot of following on our Radio La Difference radio. Everybody doesn't have Facebook. And we now have a loyal following on the radio station. So I appreciate Mr. Mann and the community radio station for that. I want to shout out to our radio listeners because we can't see them on the feed, but they let me know they are there. So we appreciate them this morning and every Saturday morning. And Mr. Mann, we appreciate you. This platform has been amazing. So thank you so much. All right, this morning we are talking about environmental justice, sustainability, and just making Evanston a more resilient community. I remember being younger and talking a lot about air pollution and about littering. We had big cleanup days. And I'm hoping, I don't see it a lot, I'm not in the schools, but I'm hoping that's what's still going on. Those are some of my really big memories in elementary school, really trying to make Earth better and heal the Earth and make our planet the best place it can be. So those are some of my first memories of being environmentally conscious. I can't say that stayed with me all through my adulthood. And a lot of us, I think we don't think about food waste and just pollution and gas in cars, but we're making a change. We're making a change as a nation. So before we get started with our guests, I'm going to ask some of my advocates, I have a couple here with us, to reintroduce themselves. You guys are going to get used to them. They'll be with us now for the next couple of years. So I'm going to ask Ty to reintroduce herself and tell us about your first memory and being environmentally conscious and what that was. Good morning. You're mute, baby. No. Okay, I'll go ahead to Donna, who is with us. She's traveling, but I hope she can hear us.
Good morning. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you.
Sorry, I traveled to New York and we were heading over to New Jersey to pick up one of my cousins for lunch. But anyway, so good morning, Rachel, and thanks for joining us. The first time my first encounter, I guess, with having to think about the environment was when I was a child, and we had to start recycling. Recycling plastic bottles, cans. I saw it as a way for me to make money because I was able to take it over to one of the recycling plants in Evanston and get some pocket change. But that was mainly my first encounter with having to think about the environment. But I saw it as a way to make money. So I'm happy you're here today, and I have tons of questions.
Oh, perfect. I was never a great recycler, and I'm really going to try to get better. I'm hoping we're going to have some lessons in it or something. I always mess up, but I'm going to be better. Ty, are you with us now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. Good morning, Rachel. Good morning, advocates. Good morning, Ms. Kim. Good morning, Mr. Mann. My name is Taishia, and I am, like Ms. Kim said, advocate. I feel like my first that I can remember memory of environmental health, there was a big oil spill when I was younger. And I remember they were like collecting the animals. It was like birds and fish and so forth and so on. And they were washing them with Dawn. I'll never forget, like it was like a big advertisement for Dawn, and they were like getting the animals and trying to keep them clean. And then that kind of catapulted my interest in recycling and things of that nature. And similar to Ms. Kim, I don't feel like I do it as much as I should, but sometimes it becomes overwhelming. And I would really be interested in learning from you how we can become better, environmentally friendly people without feeling overwhelmed. So yeah, that was my first experience.
I remember that. I remember that oil spill. I think they play that dog commercial still today when they're washing the ducks off, or the penguins, or they're washing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was heartfelt. That was heartfelt. So we have Rachel Rosner here with us today. She was here with us before with Citizens Greener Evanston, where their mission is to make Evanston a more environmentally just, let me start over, a more environmentally just, sustainable, and resilient community. And she was here with us to tell us all about that project. And I think she'll talk a little bit about that today because she is still on the board. But we're here to hear about a project, a youth program called Our Future. So we had a lot to talk about, Rachel. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Kim, and wonderful to meet you. It's so interesting to hear what everybody has to say on this topic, and it's really interesting. So yes, I'm the president of the board of Citizens Greener Evanston. I'm a lifelong Evanstonian, Washington shoot, ETHS, and my kids also. So I was like that green mom at Washington School that was bringing kids out in the garden and teaching some of the things you're talking about. And, you know, being in this role at CGE has been really eye-opening for me. I'm sort of coming to realize, and it's interesting even hearing you guys say, I'm not as good at recycling as I should. I think environmentalists are seen as like scolds, you know, or doomsdayers. Like nobody really wants to hang out with us. Just kidding. I do have friends, but I mean, I don't want to talk about that stuff all the time at parties. You know, it's interesting. So how do we change that conversation? You know, so and when I was here before, it was with Janet Alexander Davis of Environmental Justice Evanston, which is a program of Citizens Greener Evanston. We have like 7 different programs, one around food, water, natural habitat restoration, and then energy. So Environmental Justice Evanston actually just won a grant from Northwestern. They're working on mapping environmental justice areas in Evanston. They started because of the waste transfer station on Church Street, which really is like the most flagrant example of environmental racism in our town, right? So they have been fighting that, and it led to bigger things like access to nature, clean air and water. So when we talk about the environment, right, sometimes people think that's just for nature lovers or Sierra Club or Whole Foods shoppers. And it's really like, this is about everybody having access to just a livable planet. And now this new layer of the climate crisis adds another justice layer, really, you know, as we're thinking, you know, I think sometimes people think racial justice and environmentalism are sort of 2 different tracks, but more and more I'm really understanding it is the same conversation. It's, you know, because the people who are causing this crisis are affluent people, tend to be white people, and the people who are bearing the brunt of it are lower income and BIPOC and more vulnerable populations. So I think the more we can unite and find those intersections, like housing insecurity, food insecurity, and work together. And I want to say, I've learned also that the emphasis on like recycling and habits, I mean, we need a cultural shift around this stuff, but also people say like the oil companies are thrilled that you're worried about what to do with your peanut butter jar, because then you're not focusing on changing policy that's going to take away their dollars. So that's my focus, is policy change, right? Versus habit change. But we need it all, culture change, right? And that goes back to the curriculum piece that you're talking about, Kim, which is really close to my heart. Having grown up in Evanston and watched and then raised kids here, seeing the evolution of the conversation around race in schools, and knowing that like a lot of stuff wasn't taught to us on purpose, right? Because if we were empowered with that information, then we would cause changes that took power away from other people. I think the same thing is true with environmental issues, that there are people in power who are designing the curriculum that our children are learning, and they don't want people to really understand ecosystems and how fossil fuels, oil and coal, and the burning of oil and coal, which is making some people very rich, is really causing, you know, storms and floods and fires and terrible damage to a lot of people, especially those with fewer resources, right? Those of us who have air conditioning and health insurance, or the ability to move if things get really bad, we're going to be okay. And we can kind of put our heads in the sand around this stuff. But there are a lot of people in our country and a lot of people globally who don't have that privilege, right?
Absolutely. And thank you for really making that connection with environmental justice and racial justice. I mean, it's one and the same. And we do have to have a culture shift. And we do want to change those systems. So we got to do the work to get there. And I'm so glad that we're going to talk about programs like yours. And then that's to start young. This culture shift can't start. Kim is old now. It can't start with me. Yeah. It has to start young. And we really have to have a different mindset moving forward. So thank you for pointing that out. Thank you for saying that, you know, we want to have this a part of the conversation that people want to talk about and not just, oh, here we go again. And you're right. I do feel ashamed that I don't recycle as best I should and compost and all those good things that you know you should be doing. But I think we're on the road if we're thinking about it. I think we're getting a little closer.
Yeah, that shame is not helping anybody, right? It's just making people. And actually, that's a great, like that emotional piece, I think is a really, I attended a workshop by a climate psychologist who really talked about, there's a lot of people who are running the conversation, even around the solutions, are scientists and engineers and policy people, right? And if you're not one of those, you feel like I don't have a place at the table. And her point too was that we got to start with the feelings, right? So when you're thinking about the climate crisis, rage is one that especially this younger generation feels, right? Sad, overwhelmed, shame. I mean, people feel, you're not the first person I've heard, not only about not having the right habits, but not understanding the issues well enough, right? So acknowledging that will and having that transparent conversation, I think will help to engage more folks. That's the dream.
Well, we're getting to the dream, and I'm going to ask people to share this video so people can really hear us starting to talk about environmental justice and what that means.
Justice.
Thank you guys for watching. I see Alderman Simmons is watching with us.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you, Alderman Simmons, for watching with us. Please share this
I've
video.
had a great conversation with her about this topic. She's definitely shined a light on some aspects of it. And in fact, I particularly remember thinking, she mentioned somebody might not even have room for a recycling bin in their apartment, right? And you're coming at them saying, why aren't you doing this and that? So being really, really mindful of that. I just heard that climate justice is really the term I like to use. I mean, environmental justice, but now I'm zooming in on climate change because there's recently this intergovernmental panel on climate change that's released a report that says, you know, every horrible thing you're hearing in the news about fires, storms, floods, hurricanes is for sure climate change, and it's here to stay. But we can stop it from intensifying, and we can stop it from, you know, getting more widespread, but it's going to require some really serious policy change, right? So another term I heard is climate reparations, which I think is a really, right, in light of that whole conversation I was just talking about. It's an interesting way to think about it. So that brings me to It's Our Future, which is a program of 7 Generations Ahead, which is a bigger environmental organization based in Oak Park. And it is youth-driven climate justice organization that's focused on speaking at city council, speaking at your school board, writing op-eds. They do a podcast sometimes. They're involved with the One Earth Film Festival. I'm newish to the job, but another workshop I attended that was incredible to me was about youth-adult partnerships. And, you know, because a lot of times adults take up more than their share of space in the room, not unlike white people. And so how to really have an authentic partnership with young people, really recognizing what they bring to the table and, you know, maybe serving in more of an advisory capacity, but thinking, you know, that's what I'm hoping it looks like as we move forward. So, and then the super exciting thing about It's Our Future is that we are taking 6 youth this year to the UN Climate Conference, which is in Scotland. So that's also known as COP26. You see different language in the paper, how they talk about it, but it's the same conference where the Paris Climate Agreement was written. That was 2015, the Paris Climate Agreement. So it's going to be delegates from around the world, like John Kerry would be ours, in a room hashing out this policy. And I just read an article that says they're not aiming high enough right now. Like, we got to push harder for the decarbonization, for reducing greenhouse gases in a bigger, harder way. So, and people, and there's another interesting justice layer. I mean, on the global level, right? People who live closer to the equator are more likely to be lower income and are really bearing the brunt, right? And this is where we're talking about islands going underwater. And then these northern nations that have huge economies, again, are causing that problem. So the youth are going to get to be observers in that delegation room. And then there's also more like what you think of as a conference with exhibits and workshops and stuff. There's going to be youth from around the world, art, like going back to that, everyone at the table, like there's such an important place for artists and poets and people with different skill sets to help communicate it out. And we're going to be doing videos and interviews, live streaming, hopefully back. We have 1 ETHS student coming, 3 from Oak Park, because it's been an Oak Park program, and 2 CPS students, 3 CPS teachers. So I think it's going to be phenomenal. We're going to be doing a lot of, social media posts, live streams, hopefully into the classrooms, but also looking for other outlets. And then we're recruiting for It's Our Future in Evanston. We really want to grow it. And so if you know a young person, or you are a young person who might be interested, I'll put it in the chat how to get a hold of me.
And Rachel, so this is not just a community program, it's a global program. These are youth from around the world.
Well, It's Our Future is local.
Okay, but this other
we're going to this conference that's global,
mm-hmm.
And bringing that information back. So then I think these youth, and this is not the first year that It's Our Future has gone to the summit. It was in Madrid 2 years ago. It wasn't last year. So if you joined now and got real involved, you could very well be going to the next one. We don't know where it would be, but then you have such a deep understanding of this issue and the policy piece that you come back to your city council and say, this is why it's urgent and this is what you have to do about it. That we're raising a generation that is empowered to do that.
So if I'm a teen, why would I think I would be interested in this? Because I'm throwing around these terms and maybe I don't know quite what they mean, but if I'm interested in what kind of things would I be interested in that would make me want to be a part of it?
Wow, that's such a great question. I mean, and that's this piece about hoping that everyone, that I'm trying to convey the message that there's room for everyone at this table, and that climate justice, climate reparations, that intersectional environmentalism has to be part of the conversation, and that you're going to be listened to about what's important to you. So, right, maybe you're a teen who's really into social media. Maybe you're more of a backseat person. Maybe you're good at organizational systems. Maybe you're just good at talking to people. Mm-hmm. That there's a place at the table for everyone. And then for me, like, the reason I'm even got involved in all this is because I'm overwhelmed about this issue. And what gets me up in the morning is doing this work in community, right? That you need a cohort, you need people who share concern, share your feelings about it, and that you're working together. That keeps a person going, right? Than doing it in a vacuum.
Yeah, and we all live on the earth. We all have that in common, and we want to take care of it and make it better. I have consciously surrounded myself with folks who are really intentional about taking care of the earth. I went to a zero waste party. I'm going to try to have one day.
Oh, nice.
Zero waste party. So not all the 10 the tinfoil pans that we use, not the
Right.
silverware. Everything was sustainable. Everything they used over, and then they composted all the leftovers. It was amazing. And then I felt guilty, but it did inspire me to.
Yeah.
One day I want to have a zero waste party. I'm gonna encourage our listeners. Let's try to do a zero waste gathering, where we're not creating more and more stuff. So I want to let the advocates ask the question, and I'm going to ask one of the advocates to take out the link and put it in the comments if somebody has their phone nearby. So if you know youth who want to be involved with this program,
Yes.
to pass this link on. But I want to ask a couple of questions before we get back to you, Rachel.
Okay. I do have a question, Miss Rachel. Thank you so much. I wanted to know, for young people, again, a person like myself who feels overwhelmed with being responsible and taking action to commit to the community and committing to the environment, what are some small steps we can take? I've seen statistics like, if you don't use this much paper, you save this many gallons of water. What are some small actionable steps that we can take that will make a larger impact as we start to learn more and start to, become more environmentally informed and educated and responsible?
Yeah. Well, actually, Kim mentioned food waste, and there's an organization called Project Drawdown that's like 80 scientists from around the world that put their head together around the top 100 solutions. This is drawdown refers to drawing carbon out of the atmosphere, which, once we stop putting it in, we can start drawing it out. And some of those things are super policy oriented, like refrigeration management, which I don't even fully understand. But number 3 on the list, which is sort of the first that we can relate to, is reducing food waste, right? We throw away 40% of the food we grow in this country. And when it goes to the landfill, it emits methane, which is, I think, 150 times more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, right? That is polluted. And not to mention, people are going hungry. And kids in particular waste a mother load of food. They just do. So thinking hard about using up what's in the fridge. Actually, Alderman Simmons and I had a fun conversation about that too, especially during COVID, when in those early days when you couldn't run to the grocery store all the time, you're like, I know I could use this little piece of cheese and this last carrot. That piece, but also like not ordering or taking or serving what you're not going to eat. And then again, back to that bigger policy piece, I'd love to see students showing up at a school board meeting saying, you need to teach us about this. You need to be, they're starting to compost in the cafeteria at ETHS, but there's so many things that we could be demanding. And I think when we're talking about that cultural shift, the schools is really a good and important place to start, right? I've been thinking Dr. Witherspoon is getting ready to retire, and we should just get in his head about this being his legacy, right? He's a person who cares about this generation. This has to be his legacy to make sure that young people are empowered to tackle this crisis. So.
Hi, Rachel. This is Donna. I do have a number of questions, but I'll just start by saying that growing up in Evanston, my grandmother, I guess what became a fad and now people are attempting to do on a daily basis of recycling. My grandmother, who actually grew up during the Great Depression, they knew how to recycle. They didn't, it wasn't, you have to do this. Everything they reused.
I love that.
She did, I guess, composting because she would take scraps and put it into the garden. But those are things that she learned from her mother and she learned from her mother. Yeah. So it's generational.
I love that.
But I don't want to be a pessimist, but because I've traveled a lot in Europe, I've spent a lot of time in France and Belgium, in England. I've even been to Germany. I lived in Canada, and I've also spent some time in Africa. And I see the hypocrisy of the environmentalists, because oftentimes they tend to be people that support companies such as Tesla, and they look for clean energy, and not knowing, the average person has no idea that these companies that use electric cars are adding to slavery in the countries that the materials are coming from. They are displacing people from their homes, not by choice, but by force. And these companies oftentimes are exploiting people in developing countries. Yeah. And the sad part is, on our end, specifically in the United States, because I think in Europe they recycle more than here, and Canada recycles far more than here. But here in the United States and in the US, it's all colors where there's a culture of excess and overindulgence.
Terrible.
Where we buy to throw away.
Yeah.
And by doing that, it's adding to the deaths of millions of people in the developing country, in the developing world.
Yeah.
And when we speak about, climate change, you have to also pose the question, is it actual climate change or is it increased industrialization? Because you have lakes being poisoned because of mines. You have, complete deforestation throughout Africa and Southern America.
Yeah.
And it adds to the industrialization and imperialism that has plagued the world for the past nearly 400 to 500 years.
Absolutely.
So,
that's definitely the core. Just climate change is definitely a result of that consumer culture that is based in capitalism, right? Capitalism means you have to grow and grow and grow the economy. People think they can consume their way to a better world. Like, that's called greenwashing. Like, the best thing you could do, but rather than buy a brand new Prius, is drive the car you have into the ground, right? So that
absolutely. So I'm wondering, are you going to also be teaching the children that when they're advocating, to become, I guess, climate warriors, to teach them how, also speaking about the injustices in these many nations that are taking place by companies that are getting minerals from these countries that are at war.
Yeah.
And how they're being trafficked across the borders illegally to still be imported into the United States, Europe, and Canada.
I mean,
to consume.
I do think the environment, there are definitely major facets of the environment. Even like Sierra Magazine has a lot of articles about like indigenous cultures and those kinds of stories of what's going on. I think I want to be careful not to say that those problems are caused by environmentalism, right? That if there were environmentalists, I think those issues would be worse.
Well, I think like many times, like I can say I'm part of the problem because I own Apple. I own a lot of Apple products.
Sure, right. We're all part of the problem.
Right. The vast majority of Apple's materials come out of conflict nations. And we are not speaking about those conflict nations and the fact that without those materials, many of our products would not work. So how many of us are actually standing up and speaking up against what's taking place in these nations where these materials are causing war and death?
Well, I want to give Rachel a chance to answer.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. We're winding down. We want to have these points. These are amazing points. We know from early on that the environmental justice, racial justice, economic justice, all are walking that same path. And then thank you for bringing that up. Before we do get out of here, I want to thank Miss Charlene for joining us. She joins us every Saturday morning. Gina's with us. Miss Kim from the Kim Club. There's a Kim Club, guys, because there's a million Kims. With us. So thank you, Miss Kim. And thanks everyone. I mean, this has been an amazing topic. I hope you continue to share this. This is our earth. And we need to take care of it. Rachel, before we go, is there anything you want us to know or need us to know?
I just have to say this has been a really rich conversation. I'm so grateful, and I would love to keep in touch. And, I should just put my own, it's our future at 7 generations ahead is my email. So if anybody wants to extend the conversation or learn more about It's Our Future or just chat with me, I'm always up for that. And thank you for those provocative conversations. And Donna, I want to mention, like, we'll have an ear out for that topic, especially in Glasgow. Another interesting piece about this, I just read a story that said some of these lower income countries have lower vaccination rates, so they might not be able to send delegates, which is its right. So that's another major justice issue that we have to ask ourselves. Like, it's messy, but it's so important to stay in the game and stay in the conversation, and you know, and yes, absolutely lift up those voices. So thank you so much.
We have work to do, and we look forward to working with you. Everyone have a safe and happy Saturday. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Listening to Evanston Cradle to Career Advocates for Action on Radio La Difference Chicago. Please tune in again next Saturday for another show.
You're showing us the way.